Good morning, West Coast viewers. Good afternoon in the Central and the Eastern time zones and throughout the rest of the world, be it East or West. This is Michael Monroe. I'm going to spend a few minutes with you talking about what SDN and Tesla's electric vehicles have in common. I like to call it innovation at the speed of light. So just a couple of things to use the term that's required at every presentation, housekeeping items. Just want to establish what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. What we're going to do, I promise, is to try to explore SDN from a fundamental perspective, not a deep dive technically. We want to talk about it in the context of a digital business, kind of how it would work, how it would help, particularly one that's heading into the digital domain and beyond in the 21st century. And then talk about what it brings to the business, what it's going to require, what the ramifications are, that kind of thing. And then talk a little bit about its suitability. Some businesses it'll be better for than others. And then we'll talk about any competitive advantages that may be gained, perhaps. And then, of course, the fun part will be is we'll contrast it to another disruptive technology, an innovative technology in the form of Tesla's vehicles and what they're doing in the marketplace. So that's what we're going to do. What we're not going to do is play technical person. That's not me. I'm a business guy, but I want to make sure we address the technology and make sure that we overlay it with the proper treatment for the business. Okay, so let's go forward. We've got some people out there. Thanks for everybody that made it. We're 2 minutes into it, so we're going to go, and I'm going to forward the slides. So first thing we ought to do, in my opinion, is define what a digital business is. Exactly who is, what is a digital business, what does it look like? And so the gurus and luminaries in the business, the Gartners and those people, they talk about it from the perspective of the business is really blending the digital world that we all know in the technology game, that is ICT, and the physical world, maybe bricks and mortar businesses and those that have a physical presence beyond the internet, let's say. But the idea is to boost their productivity, enhance their products, and gain new services and provide better customer service. Pretty straightforward. But there's a disruptive aspect that comes along with that. And we'll talk about that as well here in a minute. So the key being, while the digital business is emerging, I wouldn't call it nascent, but it's growing. And kind of where we are now, down the road in the next couple of years, about 50% of the businesses out there, according to Gartner, are going to be digital businesses. All or some or a good portion of their business is going to be able to be delivered electronically or digitally or digitized, to use that word. But beyond that, in the future, a good 80%, over 80% of the businesses in 3 to 5 years will be heading in that direction. And what that's going to do, and one of the downsides might be, is the stress it's going to create on the organization. From top to bottom, there's going to be quite a bit of nervousness, if you will, that will come along with it. So this digital disruption, what that really looks like is companies that grab a hold of technology, pardon me, and they innovate rapidly. And then due to their innovations, they're able to gain market share over their competition. And then they are able to scale up what they've done in such a fashion that those that are still in the marketplace against them are not able to compete near as well. And as that scaling up continues, they tend to put more and more distance between themselves and the competition. In some cases, this requires or puts the competition in such a bad spot that they literally go out of business. I'm going to mention 4 of these digital disruptors in this digital business, and I know you'll recognize them. The 5th will be Tesla. First of all, Netflix. I'm not going to get into their business model. We all know what that is. But think Netflix, and then think Blockbuster. Blockbuster's gone. Netflix is here and really has set the stage as a digital disruptor for what the market is all about. We know about Apple and what they've done with the iPhone, the iWatch, the iPad, the and Amazon, moving from a distribution model 100% based on over-the-web type transactions to some of the things they're doing now, including groceries. And literally, they have really, truly disrupted the market. And lastly, Google. What they do is they fuse multiple business values, multiple values around their cost basis, their experience, their platform, and that ends up with a really disruptive new business model that makes really competition nervous, as you will. Now, what's going to happen in this zero-sum game, is what I call it, is this is going to be so high level and so important to the business that the C-suite is really going to be required to be all hands on deck. Probably won't be the CEO running this initiative, but his colleagues in the CTO space and the CIO space will be tasked with delivering a digital business and all it entails. So there's some education that might be required for some of those folks, and therefore the stress will come along with it. Really, between the next, say, 4 years or so, most of the companies that are going to be affected by this digital disruption are going to be four kind of sets of customers from a stratification or a segmentation basis. One would be technology products and services. We can expect them to be highly disrupted, those of us that are in that space. And I'm basing this on some information from Cisco and IMI. Their Global Center for Digital Business Transformation speaks to this. And then the second one will be the media and entertainment space. A high amount of disruption will occur in that space, followed by retail, number 3. Number 4 is financial services. Number 5 is telecom. So believe me, there's going to be some disruption, and there's other industries as we radiate out beyond 5 that'll be disrupted by this phenomenon, actually this architecture that we talk about, centered around NFV, SDN, and technologies other like cloud, that kind of technology set. And what this is going to require is, because the resources won't be in-house to be able to pull this off, we're going to see a large influx of consulting services from system integrators, those that have the experience to do this, work across multiple verticals, multiple customer sets and the like. And they'll have the ability to really add some value because they'll know kind of how this ought to go, and we'll have probably the expertise on board to continue to make it happen. However, it's going to bring a new definition, so to speak, to terms like scalability, redundancy, maintainability, reliability, and certainly security. Those are going to have a whole new meaning as we go on. So point here, perhaps drilled it a little hard, is what a digital business is, kind of what disruptors look like, and now we're going to talk in the segue to what's going to be some of the underpinning to help a digital move into the a digital business move into the digital world beyond what they're doing in the physical space. So you can say then that today's networking environment as we know it would be the cat in this photo, and the lion now is going to be software-defined networks and the accoutrements that go along with it and complement things like NFV and some of that we'll talk about in just a few slides. So now we've defined the digital business. Let's define software-defined networking from a very high-level perspective. Again, this is not engineering, but it should just give us a feel at the business level of what it looks like. I like to illustrate with slides in terms of diagrams. So here's one taken from Microsoft. And basically, Microsoft is looking at it, SDN, as it pertains to an architecture that would support UC, part of what we said we would do here. So really, if you read the 2 bullets, I won't read them incomplete. I think the thing to take away from reading these bullets, particularly number 1, is we're talking about a platform, an architecture, and we're talking about an approach that really separates the data control and the applications from the network infrastructure. So when we're here, you want to think about this as a kind of deconstructing of some of the devices, or at least their ability, and moving it into a centralized control and software. So some of the infrastructure that we know today gets kind of broken out, and we kind of break this into 3 planes in terms of an architecture. You'll have the data plane, that'll remain, that's the infrastructure layer. You'll have protocols that talk in a southbound and northbound fashion. Then we'll move into the controller plane, which is in the green box in the middle. That's where the kind of the intelligence or brains will live. And of course, we'll have the applications on the top end. What this is all going to do is give us some flexibility now to lower the cost of networking. The devices probably won't have to be near as intelligent as they used to be at the infrastructure layer. We'll have, as a result, a corresponding reduction in cost, capital equipment cost, and operating equipment cost, because some of these devices will be centralized using NFV. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then, of course, we'll be able to move quickly in terms of the speed of the business to do things through and over the network that we couldn't do before, because we'll be able to have good management and control of the platform now and do some of these things in real time with some automation, which is another key attribute of SDN. That's the control, the automation, and the orchestration of the network. So something to consider. There'll be multiple forms of SDN that'll occur. It'll occur and continue to occur in the carrier networks. We'll see a lot of that in the telecom space. We'll continue to see that as carriers bring on new services. We'll see that in the data centers for sure, whether that's a cloud data center or your own prem-based data center. You'll be implementing this technology because of the efficiencies. And of course, we'll see this, even at the local level, which could be on-prem data centers or at some point in your network, be at the edge, or be at an enterprise, or be at a branch. So let's keep going. Now, this is, by the way, about a $35 billion market, in the next couple of years. The numbers are all over the place, depends on what you count. But IDC pegs it at about $35 billion, all in, equipment, services, support, maintenance, that kind of thing. Maybe the market is segmented a little bit more when you look just at the devices that'll be deployed in the next 2 to 3 years. And the deployed in-use market will probably be a little bit north of 8 billion or so. So with NFV, the market is, plus 35 billion. I think it's safe to say that. The big drivers, as I talked about, are cloud computing, big data, and mobility. They are just consuming bandwidth and capability left and right. And as a result, we need to be able to move into an area where we can take advantage of this technology and what it all entails. This is a literally an eye chart, but it's a cool eye chart. And when I present these and put them online for you to see, take a look at this. I didn't create this eye chart, but Gartner did. But one of the things I did is I layered in the technology adoption cycle in red. And I thought it'd be interesting and fun to kind of look at some of these technologies and contrast them to where they are in terms of the old Jeffrey Moore crossing the chasm that we all know and love in this business. So take a look then at your far left. That would be the most innovative technologies that are coming online. A little bit very difficult to see, I realize, but stuff like data broker and quantum computing and all of that cool stuff. I never heard of smart dust, but now we have. And since we know about 3D computing, guess what? 4D computing and printing is coming. So we'll be seeing that. And all of these things on the far left are really, truly innovative technologies, many of which perhaps won't ever make it. But if you look to the right of that, moving left to right, we call this now, or Gartner calls it, the peak of inflated expectations. When you go from the innovation trigger into the inflated expectation zone, now, people are expecting this to cure cancer. No offense to anyone that may be suffering, but, or maybe cure colds, but to go down to the drugstore, take it, and, here you go, this fixes all your problems. That's going to be at a peak, and we see some technologies that are entering that space for sure. One of them we'll be talking about and have been is this software-defined anything, they call it, as well as autonomous vehicles, which we'll be talking a little bit about in the form of Tesla. Of course, machine learning and software-defined security, those five kind of are entering that peak of inflated expectations. Usually there's some disappointment that follows, and that's where we move into the trough of disillusionment. And some of those technologies are entering that. As you can see, the natural language is in that space, as well as augmented reality. Some of those things are pretty hot, particularly this Pokemon Go type fun little visualization that's going on out there. We don't know if it's going to make it, but it's based on augmented reality, and it's starting to enter what I would call, according to the Moore model, the chasm. Remains to be seen if it's ever going to emerge to be mainstream or not. But right now, while it's hot and fun for some, it's an augmented reality play that is really, truly high potential for disappointment and disillusionment. So then let's move over to the right quickly. Virtual reality. We all know that that's real now. We're seeing that in a lot of different industries, particularly in the medical industry and some others. And, suffice to say that that's probably entering what we would call the early adopters phase with plenty of room to grow. So that's kind of my overlay of the Moore model here in terms of crossing the chasm, along with what Gartner has done. And remember, we're just into the peak of inflated expectations on the downside of that with software-defined X, meaning software-defined anything. So that should tell us we got a ways to go and anything can happen. Most likely this will continue to evolve and continue to bring value, but it'll have some challenges along the way. So now let's look again at the model from Microsoft, and we'll add some clarity to some of these applications at the top layer. And on the UC space, they start to look familiar now. We're looking at applications like Jabber from Cisco and Microsoft's Link Play, Skype for Business, and the like. Moves all the way across the stack to Skype and clearly out to YouTube. What's going to happen is these will all be leveraging the power of a software-defined network in the UC space and the ability to do some things with the programmability and the control aspect in the platform that will allow the hardware underneath it that'll probably remain, because there's quite an investment in that, to really get orchestrated a lot better. New stuff will be pushed out in terms of software through the controller, and some of these applications will be able to take advantage of that and bring a lot more value to the business with a lot less headaches. OpenFlow is a protocol that's been around for 4 or 5 years now. Roughly 2011 it came online, and that allows you to really handle communication between different vendor devices. That's that interface that's going to sit in the middle, and it's going to provide some what they call southbound capability between various vendor devices in the infrastructure and the balance of the network. We'll hear a lot about that, not in this call, but in the industry. So expect that to be a leverage point in terms of a protocol going forward. Now we're going to kind of segue a little bit into another complementary component, and this would be an architecture that's built on what they call virtualization. We're taking network functions, which were commonly in devices, and we're going to now decouple them from the device, so to speak, and virtualize them, much like what is done in software on servers now on relatively inexpensive commodity hardware. The software is really going to become what used to be the device. So the purpose-built device, an individual router that you might have bought, or maybe even a content delivery device that you might have bought, load balancers, whatever, a lot of them now will be virtualized and put into an environment that could be on-prem, could be in a data center at a service provider, but really more than anything, be able to be chained together in a virtual sense and deliver a communication service. So the resulting output of that is virtual network functions in the second screen. And the key, or in the second bullet, the key to that will be the fact that you'll be able to now take these functions that used to be in separate boxes, put them together, as I said, in a service chain, but now manage them, orchestrate them, turn them up, turn them down, add the higher availability, be able to control the security to a great extent, and scale them up. And since they're in software versus hardware, the cost should come way down. So you could expect a pretty good return on the investment there. Should be able to give good TCOs as well, and probably require a lot less headaches for staff when it comes to doing certain things. And again, since we're going to talk about UC and those applications in a little bit, it's important to note here that these would be great in UC environments. SDN, as well as NFV, are very good for the unified common collaboration environments of a digital business as it goes forward. So let's take a look at that and see how that plays. So now we've taken some of these technologies, we've kind of brought them together at various pieces of the business and the architecture. And we're just kind of making some theoretical statements here, but a lot of times organizations are configured around this. Whether they have NFV in the cloud at the service provider level or not remains to be seen. SDN in the data center remains to be seen. However, good chance there's one or both in your carrier's cloud, one or both in your cloud if you've got a cloud, a hosting provider or a cloud provider, or a data center on-prem somewhere. So there's a pretty good chance you're using these technologies. I've just broken them apart and illustrated them here as we've talked about them. But the digital business is going to leverage this architecture in some concept. So taking a look out from the digital business over to the right, we look at the applications now. A lot of businesses today are running some kind of applications in the unified comm and collab space that allow their business to be able to be a digitally enabled business with a go-to-market strategy that crosses sales, marketing, products, and services. And the employees are collaborating internally and externally with and around Salesforce, Oracle, WebEx, and that. And so these kind of application suites will need to be able to take advantage through APIs associated with SDN and NFV. And I think that's going to continue to grow. We can expect that to be a challenge for some businesses without the proper expertise in terms of in-house staff. And if you move up, then we start looking at the real business operations, the nuts and bolts of the business. And we're seeing a real move again at a very fast rate to communication enable these business processes. What that means is applications like SAP's HANA for ERP, manufacturing environments, and the like is going to be able to be communication enabled. It is already, as is Salesforce, as are some others. So from within the application, you'll be able to have instant communications with colleagues internally, and federated situations where you can talk to ecosystem partners in the business, could be suppliers, could be collaborators, and the like. We know Microsoft is square into this space with Office 365 and some of the features and functions that come along with some of the apps we know that are inside of that, SharePoint and Azure included. And of course, Amazon Web Services, given what it is, will certainly be a good mix in this business operations environment where we'll be moving workloads to Amazon and to the Microsoft cloud and IBM's cloud and the like, as well as Google. And now you'll need to address them across the network. So the strong, robust, dynamic network is going to be very important. And a piece that doesn't get as much viewing sometimes, but is probably growing to be as much as anything of importance, and that's customer interaction solutions. With so much going on the web and over the internet and that medium, the customer is able to come at you in omni-channels now, and that's multiple channels. You can imagine text messages, you can imagine a voice conversation, jumping onto your website, even want to elevate that or escalate that up to a video. There's some vendors out there that are providing some capability in certain vertical markets that will nail up a video conversation with an agent, a one-to-one video conversation that allows them to have all the background that you've had in terms of any social media posts that you've made associated with their product and company, as well as any calls that you've logged into, as well as your trouble tickets and your entire history. Take that, escalate the call up with the agent, pass it to the agent, and now the agent will load up a video session one-to-one with the client if the client is video enabled. So we can expect that. Cisco's a leader in that space. There's a few others. There's been some consolidation in the space, as we know, around Avaya and what they're doing, interactive intelligence being another. So we expect that to explode as a space. And we know that the customer, it's all about the customer. So the customer experience and customer sat are going to be a lot of what digital businesses care about. They'll be able to measure it through platforms like this with technology like we talked about. And of course, the Internet of Things, or as Cisco calls it, the Internet of Everything. Those billions of devices that'll be interconnected, pushing a lot of data bidirectionally in some cases, machine-to-machine type technologies and data that'll be coming out will be an explosion of data and information. The big data scientists will love it, but you'll need to be able to mine that data, to be able to store the data, and to be able to do some things with it that will feed into those bubbles to its left of the Internet IoT/IOE circle. And so that's where these applications will come in again, based on the network that you provided in the architecture around NFV and SDN. So this then, really truly now, this is so technical, if you will, that these digital businesses we talk about, leveraging the technology, man, they've almost turned into technology companies themselves. The industry talks, these analysts and that, Gartner and Datum Group and the others talk about the necessity of the business to really, beyond who they may be in terms of the customer facing, internally, they need to think and act like technology companies in order to take full advantage of these technologies and to satisfy their customers. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I think if you were a super technical person in any of these technologies, you'd probably get your pick of career path in terms of working in the enterprise, working at service provider, of course, working at OEM, solution integrators, and the like. So what I thought we'd do here is just kind of take a look and say, okay, who's delivering what? Just a couple of examples about what's available out there in the marketplace today. Some recent announcements we've seen here in the last few months. Some of this has been out a little while. Some of it is relatively new. Conceptually, it's all new to some degree. This is AT&T's approach on the screen to a managed feature. That'll be another thing we'll see quite a bit of, is managed services associated with this style networking. Now, they're calling theirs network functions on demand. It's a component of their network on demand offering. And most of us have never really looked at AT&T to be necessarily the leader in a lot of stuff. They are the 800-pound gorilla regardless, but this is something kind of cool. And what it entails, and what the far left is basically saying, it's talking about NFV as we've described it, and it shows how routers, firewalls, WAN access devices, and devices of that nature will kind of collapse into a single device, a kind of pizza box style device, which will be fed by the cloud, the AT&T cloud. And the ability now will be put this on-prem, this small pizza box that won't require any care and feeding will live on your prem, and you'll stick this somewhere in an inconspicuous place, and you'll plug into your network, and this will give you the routing, firewall, and whatever apps that you put on it, give you that capability. It'll be managed 24/7 by AT&T. They'll bring that onto their network. They'll handle all the orchestration and all the automation and pushing all the policy to it. And you'll be able to dial up and down, if you will, the kind of services you need through an approach like this. But you won't have to maintain it. So they're pushing this in multiple cities in the United States. As I said, it is a managed service offering. You can get virtual routing now from Cisco or Juniper through their embedded software. AT&T has also put in security with Fortinet. You've got some WAN optimization using Riverbed's technology, and all of this is in an appliance that's, as I said, a pizza box style, nondescript. They don't even talk about who the manufacturer it is, but it is purpose built for AT&T. So what that does then is, as I said, it gives you this capability, puts it on-prem. Then you can jump on their network if you're a customer of theirs. And apparently you can push this out across the world now, because they say this is available in 76 countries. So if that be the case, branch offices could utilize this, remote facilities could utilize it, and put you in pretty good shape to really get your network up and running today, leveraging NFV to do it from AT&T. Pretty cool. Then I wanted to contrast that a little bit with a new announcement that came across recently from Masergy. A nice hybrid networking environment. They're kind of famous for that. and you can basically take 3 or 4 on-ramps to get to them. But they're going to do a lot of things in the SD-WAN space that give you some capability, including using your own circuits to do that and some of your own devices as well. So you got intelligent connectivity, if you look at the far right side, which is delivered across what could be private networks if need be. And they talk about network as a service, which allows a tunnel to be built and to use broadband connections to deliver some of this. And they'll do all the management of the devices, as well as certainly the platform and the circuits. And so at the top, which is very fuzzy, I apologize, you can't see it near as well. But what you have there is some of their capability to do some of the things we talked about that AT&T's doing. Nobody has more than about a 5% advantage in any of these spaces, in my opinion. I mean, either you're leading by 5% or you're trailing by 5%. To get way out in front of someone, business-wise, organizationally, is very difficult today, because the pool of not only people but existing technology is there, and it's just a matter of how each of these vendors uses it, and kind of how they blend it and shake it up and add some secret sauce. But at the end of the day, there's not much more, in my opinion, than a 5% delta or differentiation or differential between organization capabilities. So this one here is nice because this addresses SD across the WAN and gives you the ability to do some things, including use dedicated hardware on customer prem, as well as the customer's backbone if they've already got that in place. So this is a good, strong outfit based, I believe, in Richardson, Texas. And I think they'll be a good challenger and remain a good challenger against the AT&Ts. Also, you'll see that they have the capability to address the Google Cloud and the cloud providers like we talked about a few minutes ago. So take a look at that if you're interested in building a hybrid network and using SD-WAN technology to do that. And perhaps even if you got some existing equipment or maybe an existing relationship with a carrier, good chance they could architect something for you from Masergy to make it work. So let's keep rolling. So now we're going to do a pivot here, as they say. A couple words you always got to use in any presentation: pivot, stuff like that, housekeeping, always cool terms. In this case, though, we're going to go and talk about a disruptive technology from a company that's a digital business company, as we defined on the front end. And I really think that they're going to change transportation and energy delivery systems forever. I think there's no going back from what they're doing at Tesla. And I like Elon Musk and his team and the company. And being an old guy who loved the space and exploration and the like, I think what he's doing with SpaceX is also very cool. But I love cars more than rockets. And so I thought we'd contrast this with the digital business known as Tesla, and how they have literally disrupted the auto industry. So let's take a look. I can't imagine anybody out there that doesn't know who Tesla is, but just in case, Tesla is a American and underscore American automotive and energy storage company. You probably didn't know they were an energy storage company, but they are. They design and manufacture electric cars, as we know. And they're in the battery products business. So we can expect, and I'll show you a slide or two about some of the things they're doing there that are really cool. I think Samsung needs to get a hold of these guys because they could help them with their battery problem, perhaps. But they are a publicly traded company. Their symbol is TSA. Stock is through the roof. Haven't looked at it today, but it's well north of $100, $200 a share, I do believe, traded on the NASDAQ. But really, what we know them as primarily is the electric cars that they're putting out, cool cars, as well as the battery manufacturing. And they're doing it, as I say here, unlike any other company on earth. So move forward. What we start to see now is kind of what Elon is quoting here in terms of his master plan. This is the second phase of it, so to speak. And, his goal is to continue to build beautiful cars and devices in terms of some of the things he's doing around solar and storage of that kind of capability, but then to expand it to more vehicles. He's going to do some more things on the vehicle side. Certainly going to do this autonomous driving in the self-driving space. Their cars are pretty good when it comes to that. albeit they've had some bad press of late, but I think they'll fix that. And then what I thought was very interesting, he's got a portion of his model here as to saying that he's going to have a way for your car to be able to help you make money, not as a Uber machine, but as the availability into a fleet. Your car would be entered into an available fleet, and it would literally self-drive itself to some location somewhere to be offered up into a fleet and leveraged by other people, let's say, when you're not using it. I mean, that's unbelievable capability once it comes online, and it reminds me kind of the old Jetsons commercial or cartoon that used to come out of. I know I dated myself right there, but what the heck. So moving forward then, I thought I'd go down to my local Tesla gallery, they call them, and take a look at what they had. So right here locally to where I live in Southern California, we've got one in a shopping mall. That's the first thing. These guys have disintermediated the dealer, and they've turned that model on its ear. You don't have to go to a big auto mall where there's a bunch of cars, a bunch of people like walking 10 football fields. Instead, this place is really truly in your local mall in some cases, or inside of a department store. I'm hearing in the men's section as an example, depending on what your construction of a retailer is and the mall. So they've moved that now right close to the customer. You deal directly with Tesla. You don't deal with Joe's dealership. And really, this has just changed the whole way the auto industry has typically done business for centuries now. So what that's done, now you're starting to leverage some of their innovation. You can see it firsthand because their gallery is full of it. And the keys to Tesla are their ability to power these cars off of batteries. Soon it's going to have some solar capability down the road. But some of those things they're going to be doing with this gigafactory that I'll show you in a minute, really truly is pretty innovative. And as a result of that and their potential to acquire the remaining interest in Solar City will give them the ability to do solar. So when solar comes online, we'll see another wave of this that we haven't seen anything like in automobile. Then they do over-the-air upgrades to the software. Imagine your car, not your computer, but your car is in your garage. It's plugged in. It's getting charged, and it's programmed that at 3 o'clock in the morning, 3G software upgrade gets pushed down, and that upgrades anything electronic that they need to upgrade. It's a new rev of software, if you will. And what that does is gives you more feature functionality. You don't change the hardware, obviously, but by putting software and doing it over the air from model to model in terms of model year, they can add features. And I mean, it's just incredible to think that your car would be doing that in a fashion like we know computers to do that. The other part is, you know, as I mentioned visionary in this caption, the autonomous driving. Now, personally, where I live, there's no way, I don't care what, not only with a cool car like this that I would let it drive itself or any other. I'm going to have hands on the wheel, foot on the accelerator and the brake at all times, just too much traffic. Well, some of these autonomous driving vehicles thrive, supposedly, in high-density traffic. I can't imagine how, but nonetheless, Tesla is really, truly behind that and pushing that in a major way and has had a fair amount of success in doing that. And then the other thing that I'm seeing that is really pretty cool, I've used that word a lot, I know, but is the subsidized energy savings. Believe it or not, this is the only car manufacturer that has really, truly built supercharged facilities. They call them supercharger facilities across the United States that would allow you to drive coast to coast and plug in to AC to get your car recharged at no cost to you. Incredible concept. That's what it's taken for them to get some adoption to the extent that they have. They've subsidized it. There's a bunch of things going on with their business model in terms of the economics that I got a chart for, but I think that's pretty interesting. It'd be like the equivalent of an internal combustion engine car that we normally drive today, that if you traveled across the United States or locally, even in your town, you would have a gas station you could go to and fill up for free. It'd be subsidized by the car manufacturer. Incredible thought. Not going to happen, but really makes these guys different. And then, of course, the gigafactory that I'll show you a couple pictures of and we'll talk about real quick. So this is a chart here that the bottom line to this is their business model. It's important to understand the economics of any digital business or any business, period. So what we got here is kind of what was put together by Forbes and this Professor Krzyzewski, not Mike Krzyzewski, but Professor Krzyzewski he's at Brigham Young. And apparently he's come up with a model that took the basis of what Tesla is doing in their production today around the Model S, and said that if every Model S they build, as they enter this Model 3 world, that's their next sedan they're building, the kind of cheaper version, around $35K list price or so, that basically as they build more units in Model S, the cost of overall production comes down. And as they add Model 3 production to that, the cost per unit then drops 20% with the doubling in volume. So as you double in volume, the cost will drop. Now, that's way more math than I was ever good at, but suffice to say that he's proved it out in the chart on the right. Makes sense to me. The bottom line is, skipping way down to the bottom, that because they've got a huge back order, some 400,000 units on this Model 3, that at 275,000 units, Tesla will break even, and anything north of that will generate a profit for them. The key to that is that's going to cover that kind of those kind of economics, and the profit they can extract will cover their build out of this gigafactory and cover the existing and forward R&D and SG&A that they need to operate that company. So that's an interesting model. Take a look at that when I post these slides, or maybe go online and look at that. So basically the gigafactory, this is the super duper rendition of all the lithium ion factories that'll be built in the world. And Musk likes to talk about that. Musk likes to talk about that from a what's its capability going to be. Basically, I'm going to flip to the next slide and give you, this is a portion of it right here. Believe it or not, this is not all of it. This is being built in the Nevada desert. I'm not exactly sure where, but somewhere in Nevada. But this is what it'll look like when it's done. And let me give you the dimensions on this. The dimensions are mind-blowing. First of all, when it's fully complete, well, actually by 2018, the picture that we had up at first, we'll be able to deliver about 500,000 batteries a year to power their cars. That's the first phase of it. The second phase, and the total, when it's completely built out, this will be down the road as much as 2 to 4 years. This guy will be able to build 1.5 million batteries a year and power their cars and whatever vehicles they have online at the time. The key is the size of this. This building right here is 6 million square feet, they say. It'll be the biggest building in the world by footprint, and it'll be second only to Boeing's building, I think, where they build 747s in Everett, Washington, by volume. So that Boeing building is bigger from a volume capacity, but not by square footage. Imagine this building right here will have the ability to hold 93 747s inside. So that's pretty big. And Musk is quoted as saying he looks at the factory as a product, and it's like a giant machine that they build it as a machine. And he thinks that there's more innovation and engineering that goes into building this type of a facility than it does in his products. So that's a pretty interesting take from a real innovative guy. So this is a couple of explosions of the cars. On the left is the chassis. On the right is what the battery looks like. The batteries are on the floorboard of the car. I'm sure some of you out there are very much aware of these cars, but you can't see this. You do see the chassis on the left in the showroom, but you kind of wonder where the batteries are since there's no engine that we're used to seeing, the hood and the trunk or spaces you can store things in. And therefore, you can't find a battery that we would know it unless you were looking at the floor assembly like depicted on the right. That's why it's important then for Tesla to be able to build their own batteries, because not only do they power the cars, this is the future for them when it comes to being able to scale the numbers they need to keep the business profitable, or to make the business profitable, and to keep it viable. This is a dash of the car. This is a shot from that. basically, this is how the software updates come to you nightly, and you can literally set them up and program them much like you can your computer, and the over-the-air updates will come. It'll occur, while the car is kind of in sleep mode in the garage or wherever you park it. You'll have it plugged in to do it, and this will be something that will be the norm for these cars. It's already going on. You can literally see it on the dash of a vehicle if you go into their gallery. I thought it would be cool to talk very quickly about the autopilot. This is the entry to their autonomous driving. And this car has sensors front, back, side, and every which way. And it gives it an ability to literally, truly, you set your speed that you want to go. The driving conditions are constantly monitored, and the car is able to pilot itself along the freeway or, your roads, as well as keep the map moving. It's got a great display in terms of in the cockpit of the vehicle, and gives you a chance to not only to drive with the vehicle and in the vehicle, but to kind of see a real-time moving navigation map at the same time. Again, not something I'd be greatly interested in, as it were. It'd be nice to have, but around here, autopilot is a recipe, in my opinion, for disaster. So front and back of a shot of one of their vehicles. This is not the entry level, second up. This is their S75D dual battery D indicator. And this guy goes for about 79 grand, about the price of a Jag or a Mercedes or some of them high-end luxury cars that some of the folks drive. You get about 259 miles on a charge with this. But, it's pretty good for a car that can go 0 to 60 in 5.2 seconds. So very nice automobile, loaded with, you name it, it's got it. But it's not a cheap car, as it were, in terms of price point. That's why they're bringing this Model 3 on, Model 3 on next year, or in 18 rather, when they get that finished. This is the top of the line. Again, this is not a car commercial. I apologize if it sounds like it, but this is a digital business. What we're looking at is Tesla's product that they deliver as a digital business. And as I mentioned earlier, this is how these kind of companies that are physical companies are in industries that typically are physical industries, cars or physical devices, have done some things now in the digital realm that has really, truly changed the game. And they've done a bunch of things in technology to deliver these cars and do it in a business model that puts pressure on all the automobile industry that exists today. Clearly, some of the battery manufacturers are going to have to think twice. And you can see then that technology can play a real key point into digital business. I think it'd be interesting if somebody that calls on Tesla to talk about what their infrastructure looks like. I would have to think that if nothing else, they know how to slice data pretty well over there. This is the quickest in terms of acceleration sedan that there is out there. This is their P100. This means 100 kilowatt battery life in terms of hours. It has a dual DC motors front and back. And check it out. 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. That's rocket ship type stuff. And there's literally a button on the dash in the glass cockpit that I'll show you in a minute that has a ludicrous mode. I've driven one of these cars. It was a P85D, and it had an insane mode. Literally, the acceleration is instantaneous. When you look at this compared to an internal combustion engine vehicle, 760 horsepower, incredible, 315-mile range. Of course, the price is stratospheric as well, 134 grand. But that's, your high-end S-Class Mercedes-Benz and 750 Beamers and some of them big-time Lexuses and some of those vehicles that some of you folks drive. So well affordable, particularly when you get the rebates and the incentives that you get for green usage of these vehicles. It actually puts us in a little bit better price range than you might imagine. So, quick look at the dash. This is the cockpit on the right in terms of the heads-up display, the GPS and the full-function dash. That's about a 10.5-inch screen. If you were thinking tablet or iPad-style device, very good, very clear graphics. In the middle or on the far left end is what the Model X. This is their SUV. what the dash literally looks like. So this would be your view from the driver's seat. Quite a bit of capability built into these vehicles. A lot of toggles you can do in software that turns on features, turns them off, and makes different things happen. So again, you go to the gallery and you kind of take a walk, and they got great people there. This is a friend of mine. He befriended me. I befriended him in my visit. I've had multiple visits to Tesla. I like their cars, as I mentioned. So, one of the visits of late, I've met this gentleman, Sean, good guy. I promised him that I'd put his picture in this deck and send him a link to it so he could jump on in the future and show it to his boss and take a look. But very knowledgeable, good guys and ladies in the place, and just a whole different environment than what we're all used to. No offense to our auto dealer salespeople, but this is perhaps this is the new breed of salesperson. Very informed, very cordial, even casual dressed, as you can see. And one thing as well, you find these people to be perhaps a little bit less pressurized. If you're coming into their gallery, you're not only coming to look at the cars, but you're coming to hear the technology, and they love to share it with you. So since we're talking about innovation at the speed of light, all of this electric, SDN, NFV is all about moving electricity around, so to speak, networks, wires, speed of light, things like that, things happening in nanoseconds and smaller. I came across a cool picture that I just couldn't help but post, and I want to share that with you. And really it's about, when you look up in the night sky, what do you see, right? And we're seeing some objects that really, truly are so far away that by the time we see them, the object could actually be gone in terms of the astronomy view of that, in terms of light years away. I came across this picture out there on the internet, and I had to jump on it. This is a Maasai warrior and his son somewhere in Africa on the plains, and he's literally showing his son what the night sky looks like. You can imagine what their dialogue looks like. I put some scripture associated with it. I just felt like it was appropriate. But what they're looking at is what you can see when you've got not a whole lot of competing light in the ambient light space like we do here in Southern California. But imagine what it looks like in the dead of dark otherwise. You look up in the sky on a cloudless night, you see all of those cosmos, all of those stars that are light years away. And I just found this breathtaking. This platform doesn't do it justice. Go out on the internet, take a look at this, and this was one of the better pictures. In fact, it was rated best picture in a certain category. It finished number 2. But I thought it was interesting, and I wanted to use it to illustrate what we were trying to do. So that's about it, guys. I'm going to yield back some time here in terms of the hour that was allotted. So we're going to be right up against it, but we'll probably have time for a couple of questions. I'm not sure if they're heavy engineering, then I'm going to be able to answer them. And if not, we can get you some answers. Lastly, let me just describe who I am. I've been in this industry a long, long time. I'm not an engineer, as I mentioned, but I am a business guy, and I know how to take business problems and solve them with technology solutions delivered by my friends and colleagues in the business. And so I like to think of myself as a digital communication strategist for these global companies who want to really head towards a digital business mix. I am available for various kind of engagements you may have. My phone number and website and so forth is listed below. And I enjoy this stuff. I live here in Southern California, have traveled literally the world, and certainly don't have a problem doing that. And so if there's anything I can do to help you, please give me a shout, send me an email, whatever the case may be. I'd love to get your feedback and, be happy to share with you, over and above this right here. Do have a question here. Let me jump to. Questions come in. It says, can you briefly recap the relationship between SDN and NFV? Okay, thanks. Good question. Here's the kind of way I would sum that up. NFV or SDN, think about optimizing network infrastructure. And by that would be your switches, Ethernet switches, your routers, your wireless access points. But if you remember the OSI layers, the model, really truly SDN operates at the data link and the network layer, which is layers 2 and 3. One way to look at it, and then in terms of that, if you netted it out, you'd say, what is SDN? It's optimizing network infrastructure. Adjacent to that is NFV. And network function virtualization is one, by definition, virtualization of certain capabilities, and it's the virtualization of deployed network functions. So functions that would commonly be associated in purpose-built hardware like load balancers or firewalls or some kind of controllers that had maybe WAN optimization, WAS devices and things like that. That now has been virtualized in software, put on commodity servers, so to speak, and a lot of times put in a data center. And it's now operating at the levels above the SDN features, and it operates at layers 4 through 7. So basically, you're talking about operating at the transport layer, the session layer, the presentation layer, and the application layer. So really, truly, without overcomplicating it, which I've probably done, SDN is equal to optimized network infrastructure. NFV is optimized deployment of network functions. That'd be my best answer. Your engineering folks will be happy to answer that if you got time. So thanks for that question. Good question. See if we got any more. Okay. Well, we are up against the time window. So if there's no more, I don't see any more in. I'm not sure how you put them in, but we got one in at least. Again, if you want to give me a call, we can talk about this offline in the one-on-one. I do have my phone number put up there. Thanks for joining, folks. I know you took time out in the middle of the week. Good selling to everybody that's in sales. Great success to you, those running businesses and the like, in the engineering community out there. Thanks for making this stuff work and making it be a reality. Those of us that sell it can't install anything, so we count on you to get it done. So thanks to everyone that joined today, and have a great rest of the week. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.